I'm Kiyan.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we regenerate for the first time.
Into the second incarnation of ourselves. Yeah. Remember last week when we said we thought the regeneration was going to happen at the end of this serial? Well, it happened at the very end of this serial.
Literally, the final scene.
The final,
serial.
10 seconds even.
Yeah.
But yeah, this week we watched The 10th Planet, obviously the first regeneration serial ever, and the first introduction of the Cybermen.
Dun,
Who I liked.
Dun, dun.
I like the Cybermen as villains.
Good, because they show up a lot.
I like them more than the Daleks.
Well, they're like the new Daleks.
The next serial's a Dalek serial anyway, so...
Well, a funny thing happened with the Cybermen in that in Star Trek they had the enemy called the Borg, which were based on the Cybermen from Classic Who, and then the Cybermen of the reboot were based on the Borg from... This was circular, so... Yeah, they're pretty important.
Yeah.
Also, apparently, totally incompetent. Or at least mildly so.
Well, they didn't really know that their planet would... Well, okay, we're not going to get into that right now, but, yeah. They were pretty incompetent. I liked their voices, though.
Yeah. They talked like Captain Kirk, though. That's all I could think about when they talked.
Yeah, you're right, actually.
Okay, let's just start with the summary.
Yes. There's going to be a lot afterwards. The first Doctor's gruesome death. No, it wasn't gruesome.
He gets vaporized by the Cyber. No.
Anyway, this serial starts not where the last serial left off for a change, but with this...
But it will, in a second.
Yeah. But it starts with this futuristic-ish base in Antarctica. And I thought it was kind of over the top that it had to be in Antarctica, but I liked it because I like over-the-top stuff. But yeah, it's some sort of space mission thing to gauge atmospheric pressure, something like that.
Some sort of atmospheric testing.
But then the Doctor and co materialize in Antarctica, and they go outside with regular coats, and I was like, "What? You guys are gonna freeze?" Like, you see Polly's hands, and she's not even wearing gloves.
Well, the Doctor was wearing gloves.
They're in gale force winds, sub-zero temperatures.
The Doctor had a cloak on. The return of the cloak and the hat again.
Okay, well, the Doctor's gonna be okay. I don't know about Ben and Polly.
Wearing clothes that used to belong to Barbara and Ian. No, I don't know.
Probably. Well, they probably belong to the Doctor, and he just loans them
Why
out.
would the Doctor own woman's clothing?
He did at some point. I mean, Susan, I don't know.
Whatever.
Susan didn't take any of her stuff with her when she left.
This is true. This is very true.
But anyway,
so there's some people in the base with a periscope that looks out across the landscape, and they're like, "Whoa, there's people there," and the other guy's like, "Yeah, whatever." And then the guy's like, "Hey, there's a woman." He's like, "What?" And then everyone crowds around, and I was just like, "Wow." But yeah, so that's how they discover Ben, Polly, and the Doctor.
And they take them into the base, and everyone's like, "What are you doing here? What? Why are you here?" And the Doctor makes this snarky remark like, "You guys aren't being loud enough. I can't really hear you." And yeah, so they meet the leader of the base, General Cutler, who has an American accent, and I assume that he was American because his accent is really good. But if he wasn't, then good job, dude. Good job. Really good accent. But yeah, General Cutler is pretty suspicious of them.
Yeah.
And at the same time that they enter the base, the testing mission is sort of going awry. The two space pilot people things are like, stuff's going wrong in the spaceship, and we're not in the place we're supposed to be. And a few of the technicians at the base are like, "What? Why is this happening?" And then they notice something strange on their radar or whatever.
It's another planet.
The 10th planet specifically. Mondas specifically.
Mondas. And the Doctor, before they've even discovered the planet, thinks he knows what it is, so he like goes to tell General Cutler, and he doesn't believe that the Doctor knows, but the Doctor's written it down, so he gives it to the head scientist, Barclay. Barclay.
Yeah, Barclay, I think. I don't know.
Barclay. And, I don't know, Barclay,
Yeah,
and
whatever.
then they shove him back in the room that they're holding him in, which has a big window that I didn't realize was a window for like a whole episode, so I wondered why the general was like walking around this pole every time he went into the room.
I didn't even notice that it was a window.
Yeah, you
At
didn't
all.
know until they showed a shot from outside that room where you could see the lining of the window. But until that shot, I was like, why is the general going around that pole every time?
I didn't even notice that at all. um, but yeah, so once they discover what the planet is, the doctor's like, well, look at that piece of paper I gave you. And he basically, I guess, drew or described exactly what the planet is, which is basically an upside down Earth.
Is it an upside down Earth, or is Earth an upside down Mondas?
Who knows? But yeah, I think that at that point, what's his face? Cutler is like, what? This is just stupid. The doctor's probably in on this. It's a conspiracy. But Barclay,
Reasonable assumption.
actually, yes. Barclay is kind of convinced, and he, I think that's the point where he starts to trust the doctor and his friends.
So they're trying to get down the spaceship, which is called Zeus 4, and nothing's working because the power's being drained by something. They're not sure what. Yeah,
Right,
better get
they're-
that death count out because it's got pretty big.
Yeah, I think actually, I mean, more people died in the Daleks' master plan, but that was 12 episodes. This was 4 episodes, and like 25 people died. Anyway,
24, yeah. So they're trying to get the capsule down, and so they're calling like International Space Command, which is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland.
right.
Oh, we should mention the serial set in 1986 because it was the future for them, but it's not the future for us anymore,
Right.
which is weird to think about, actually.
They didn't go over the top futuristic though.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
you know how
it was only 20 years in the future.
but you know how a lot of things are like in the year 2020, and then you see like
well,
all
the
this
Daleks
futuristic
invade
stuff.
Earth in like 2000 and whatever.
Okay, everything was in ruins for that, so you can't really tell. But but anyway, what happens then?
So they try to get the capsule down, and the Doctor's like, "You must get that capsule down now!" And then he predicts that there's going to be visitors from the other planet, and General Cutler doesn't believe him, reasonably. And then you see...
and then the Cybermen show up, and they're like, "We're here, guys!" No.
They kill off 3 guys who are trying to break into the TARDIS, and then they come into the base, and then they're like, "We're here, guys."
And they're like, "Dun dun dun."
Now that was the end of episode 1. Or
Right.
probably. I don't exactly remember.
Basically, and
A
I don't
lot
know,
of
I
stuff
really
happened.
liked the Cybermen's design. I really like the Cybermen in general, their design and their weird voices, as we were saying before.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're weirdly shaped gun things. Yeah, they have these weapons. I guess they're sort
the
of
light guns.
light guns.
like, on...
like savages.
yeah.
But they're weirdly shaped. They have like 2 handles. It's like a disc-shaped thing with 2 handles on the side that they hold in front of them. I don't know. Ben uses them in the near future. But
The Cybermen won't let them contact the space shuttle, and eventually they give in and let them contact the space shuttle, but it's too late because the gravity of Mondaz has affected the space shuttle, and the space shuttle gets blown up by something.
right.
So far already, like 6 people have died in this serial.
Yep. Schultz and Williams were the 2 guys in the spacecraft. And then at this point, the Cybermen reveal their what they're planning to do, right?
Yeah.
So they reveal that
Oh, this is what made me feel they want to take the people to Mondes.
right. So I think the Doctor actually tells part of this that millions of years ago, Earth had a twin planet, Mondas, and that they separated. And the Cybermen used to be human or human-like, but had evolved
Be not human.
as being not human-like.
They don't have emotions.
And they've replaced most of their bodies with machines.
Yeah.
And Mondas is now running out of energy, so they piloted it back to Earth to steal Earth's energy. Kind of over the top and ridiculous, but I liked it.
For the Doctor's final story, just like, why not?
So, yeah, they're planning on draining Earth's energy and stealing it as their own. And
yeah.
Well, Cutler obviously is like, what? I won't have any of this. And honestly, I think for a few episodes, it's not the Cybermen who are the main antagonists of this serial. It's Cutler.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, I mean, obviously, the Cybermen do become antagonists near the end, but the Cybermen, I think, are different from the usual sort of antagonist we see on this show, because, as we said, they don't have emotions, so they sort of just do what's in their best interest without... And I couldn't really say that what they were doing was necessarily, quote-unquote, evil or, good or anything.
Well, until the final episode.
Well, okay. And I feel like Cutler was looking at them in a way that did sort of portray them as evil, whereas the Doctor realized that since they don't have emotions, like good and evil can't really be applied. I mean, until that thing happened near the end.
Well,
yes, the ending was very abrupt. I'm just going to say that right now.
Well, it's like, can you categorize them as evil for just doing what they do with no emotional basis? They're just doing it to save themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, they're going to kill off everybody.
Well, they went back and forth, actually, between wanting to kill off everybody and not, because they offered all the humans a place on Mondas.
But they were going to convert them to Cybermen.
True. And they didn't know about the thing that would go terribly wrong. I mean, they knew about everything else. Why didn't they know about that? Anyway.
Ben tries to steal the gun that the soldier had who got killed on... The Cybermen killed a soldier when they entered the base, and Ben tries to get the gun, but the Cybermen like, you don't trust us. Put that gun down. Well, Ben the gun.
Ben... I feel like this ties into something that happens later, but when Ben picks up the gun, he faces a Cyberman and then like hesitates and isn't able to shoot him. And then the Cybermen are like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, they lock him in the projection room.
Yep.
And he picks up a screwdriver.
The first of several times Ben gets imprisoned in this serial. First of several times they all get imprisoned.
So it would be second for all of them because they all got imprisoned in that glass room in the control room.
Right.
But Ben picks up a screwdriver, which I feel like is foreshadowing, but he's like, imagine me going at these people with a screwdriver. So he drops it, and he sees a projector. And he's like, hey, maybe if I turn this to the door, I can blind him when he comes in. And it works. And he picks up the gun and kills the Cyberman. And then immediately starts regretting it, I guess.
He's like, oh God, what have I done?
I had to do it. He made me do it. Which means Ben has now joined the ranks
of
Ben. People who have killed people on this... companions who have killed people in this show.
Yeah, and his sort of fear after he's killed the Cyberman only, I think, briefly comes up later again in this serial, but I'm hoping that continues to be part of his character development.
Right.
And, obviously the first Doctor is against needless
violence.
Death, but we'll see how Ben's character in regards to this plays out with the second Doctor. I mean, I don't know the second Doctor's personality.
I don't know either. Neither of us know.
It's good.
We'll see. So Ben escapes.
Right.
He gives Cutler's like, been knocked out by the Cybermen because he was being too much of a pain. And he's like woken up, so Ben like hands him the gun over this ledge, and then General Cutler kills the other two Cybermen.
Yeah, goes on a rampage, and then Ben confronts him, and I guess he tells him sort of what how he had to kill one of the Cybermen, and Cutler's like, "Good job, son," and Ben's like, "What? I didn't want to do that." And then Polly's like, "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, he doesn't say that, but he just says he said he does what he needs to do, or something along those lines."
Yeah, and then he calls Geneva, and they told him the ship blew up while Cutler was out, so he only found out when he woke up. But then he's called by Geneva, and they told him they sent up another ship to rescue the ship that's in space.
Zeus 5.
And then he's like, wait, that ship doesn't exist anymore. And then Geneva's like, oh, well, we took volunteers and your son volunteered. Good luck.
So his son is now in space, in danger, and is probably going to die.
Now General Cutler goes full rage enemy mode.
Right. And I know this isn't the most opportune time to mention it, and I should have mentioned this before. But well, first of all, Polly doesn't do much in this serial. And second of all, I kind of hated the things she did do. Like, when the Cybermen first show up, I hated her, how, what's her actor's name? I don't know.
Something.
Yeah, anyway, she had this line, like, "We can't trust you, you're robots," or something. She delivered it in the most mean way possible. And I was like, what? That really makes me hate you, Polly. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. So Cutler's son is now in danger, and Cutler's like, oh, hell no.
The doctor passes out.
Yeah, the doctor is...
He's wearing thin.
Yeah.
As he will mention shortly. But he passes out, so Cutler has him put in, like, one of the bedrooms.
Yeah, something like that.
Then he locks Ben in there, because Ben is just pissing him off, I guess.
Yeah.
He throws Ben in there with the doctor. He's like, lock the door, don't let him out. Before he passed out, the doctor predicted that Mondaz, if they just waited, Mondaz would end up blowing up from too much energy.
Right.
But Cutler ain't having no waiting, so he's going to use the Z-bomb on Mondaz. This
amazingly effective nuclear bomb, I guess.
The planet destroyer. He said there's 3 embedded in the Earth?
Yeah, in strategic locations.
Where are the other 2? And why would you put one in Antarctica? But Cutler calls, like, Geneva, and Geneva...
Oh, this scene.
He's like, nope, you have no permission to use the Z-bomb. We have to consult with our scientists. But then Cutler's like, so you give me permission to use any means necessary, right? And Geneva's like, yes, of course. I just call him Geneva. Did he have an actual name?
He did, but I don't know what it was.
Well, it's Geneva now. There was a guy there talking with like a really bad French accent that originally I didn't realize was a French accent until like the 3rd episode, and I was like, oh wait, that's supposed to be a French accent. But so yeah, Cutler's like, okay.
Obviously heavily implying that he shouldn't use the Z-bomb, and then Cutler's like, well, I have any means necessary now, so let's use the Z-bomb.
Barkley against the Z-bomb. Most people are against the Z-bomb, actually. Except Cutler and the other guy. What was his name? Who just kind of went along with it.
I don't think he had a name. Dyson?
Yeah, Dyson.
And this is also probably an inopportune time to mention this, but did you notice how the controller dude was really, like, not into what he was doing at all? I mean, I don't know if that was part of his character or if the actor was just lazy or what, but he was just like, yeah, whatever.
Wait, the guy was like, there's 10 spaceships coming? Or
no, it was another guy.
The other guy who, like, dabbed his neck when the countdown was happening at the end of episode 3?
I don't remember if he dabbed his neck in episode 3.
I just remember that scene because the numbers are on the screen. Yeah. And it happened twice.
Okay, I don't know.
Once in live action, once in animation.
It wasn't the intense guy, obviously. It wasn't the guy who, at this point, actually is an opportune time to mention that a bunch of ships are coming from Mondas.
So Cutler's like, all right, better speed this up. Go, 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 go. And so Barkley's like sitting in the room
and that's where
And Polly's making
three
coffee.
ends. Yeah.
No, 3 ends with the countdown.
It's where 2 ends.
Yeah, that's where
Yeah,
2 ends.
2 ends.
A lot of things happened in this episode, and these episodes, and it didn't feel rushed, which was nice.
Yeah.
So the Doctor's out of commission for like all of 3.
serial.
It would
so
be more
far.
fast-paced if the Doctor was more involved, which I'll talk about later because I actually want to mention. But
Yeah, the Doctor's still passed out, and
Polly has not been imprisoned because she's not doing anything. So like the only time it comes in handy is right now because she's able to convince Barkley to come and help Ben.
disable the bomb.
Right.
And I kind of hated what she said here too. I mean, I guess it makes sense in the grand scheme of things, but she, when she tries to convince Barkley to disable the bomb, Barkley's like, well, that would mean the death of Cutler's son, and she's like, but that's one death against so many. And I mean, obviously, I guess it's for the best, but I don't know. I kind of hate when people say stuff like that.
Yeah. Well,
I
I mean, the in one of the audio dramas, the Eighth Doctor says you never start counting lives because then you get to the point where it's 999 lives versus 1,000. And do you kill 999 people to save one? Numbers wise,
Yeah,
that's why the Doctor never starts counting numbers. He tries to save everyone.
It's good.
Yeah, Polly, wow. Polly, wow. I feel like maybe Polly said that because General Cutler was just being a jerk and had like locked up Ben and the Doctor and wasn't helping the Doctor, and Polly was concerned for the Doctor, so she was angry at Cutler.
Possibly, yeah.
So it was kind of like in a fit of rage.
I guess that would make sense.
But anyway, Barkley decides to help. And, well, Ben was trying to find a way out, and he discovered an air vent, so he was going to use it, but then he hears the door open, and then he gets down. And then Barkley tells him that air vent is the exact one he needs to go through to go disable the bomb.
And then in this amazing scene, there just happens to be sufficient writing utensil and paper on the table to draw a diagram of the air vent that Ben can crawl through. And then...
My favorite line of the whole show.
You explain it since you liked it so much.
Barkley is talking about disabling the bomb, and he's telling Ben what he has to do. So he's like, you know what, we're going to need a screwdriver. And Ben just immediately is like, I have this knife. It's like, amazing. Just amazing.
But yeah, they pull the classic escape through the air vent thing, which I guess wasn't so classic maybe back in the day.
Yeah.
Maybe they helped invent it.
Maybe.
Maybe they helped invent it.
I haven't heard a pun so bad on this show since 3 End back in episode 5.
The show needs more puns.
So Ben goes through the air vent.
Oh, I liked the scene where Barkley's like, there's no possible way that I could crawl through the air vent, and then Ben's like, well, then maybe I could, and he's only like an inch shorter than Barkley.
Perfect. Stunning.
Anyway, Ben does that, and meanwhile, Barkley and Polly are going to go distract the technicians in the room so that Ben has the chance to disable the bomb.
So Cutler shows up again. Oh, we forgot to mention the whole massacre of all the Cybermen that landed in episode 2.
Oh yeah, they land outside the base, and
7 of them got killed by the men inside the base with the Cybermen's guns. So that was a thing.
and they loot their dead bodies for even more guns.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. It's a war. Like the Ganjin even mentioned, we might be fighting the first interplanetary war. Well, not the Lost, because the Daleks invade in like 100 years.
So Ben does manage to start disabling the bomb. Polly and Barkley have distracted the guards, or the workers. And while Ben is doing so, Cutler shows up. He's like, oh, hell no, what are you doing?
Where was he during all this? I don't remember. He went to go check with something.
He realized... I forget how he realized that they...
Well, he asked Dyson where Barkley was, and Dyson said Barkley wasn't there when Dyson even came into the room. So where was... I don't remember where Barkley was before he came back to the control room, but That's how he found out that Barkley was doing something sketchy.
There was also that scene where Polly is still in the room where the doctor and Ben was, and this guard comes in to, I guess, check on them, and Polly hides, but the guard looks right at the open air vent and is just like, must be nothing.
Maybe you didn't know it was supposed to be closed. Like, you don't notice little details. Maybe it's always been open.
I guess, maybe. But anyway.
Maybe he was running on lack of sleep, considering they haven't slept for this entire serial.
True. But yeah, Cutler
throws Ben over the ledge.
That was pretty intense. He grabs Ben by the collar and just throws him down.
I thought Ben was gonna die for a second, like, legitimately.
But yeah, so that's how that happens. And you're left... So episode 3 ends with the countdown of the missile, because they go ahead and decide to launch it. And Ben is sort of... He goes unconscious, and he wakes up in sort of a daze, and Polly's like, did you manage to disable it? And he's like, what? I don't know. What's happening? And you're left wondering whether he managed to disable it or not. But then you find out right in episode 4 that he did.
Yeah. And then General Cutler just goes off the deep end, pulls out his gun, threatens Ben and Polly, and the doctor who showed up again, threatens Barkley.
Right, and for how much you start to dislike Cutler in this serial, I kind of saw at this point why he was so mad. I mean, his son was in danger, and that would drive anyone to do... Well, maybe not anyone, but that would drive...
Okay.
It's reasonable. Well,
Let's
it's
be
not
honest.
reasonable, but...
Using the Z-bomb puts his son in way more danger
this is true.
than he ever was in with the Cyberman.
This is true, but he did blame everyone around him for putting his son in danger, when really it was his own fault. But yeah, he pulls a gun on, like, everyone.
But it's okay, because the Cybermen show up and kill him!
Yep! You thought his son was gonna die and he was gonna live? Nope! His son lives! And he dies!
Well, we don't know that right now, because they do lose communication with Zeus 5, which is part of why General Cutler goes insane.
Yeah.
He thinks his son's dead.
But now he's dead.
Yeah.
So, yay. No, not yay, but just stuff.
Well, it does work out conveniently for the plot, because the Doctor convinces the Cybermen that they helped the Cybermen by disarming the bomb. So it does work out in their favor.
But the Cybermen are still like, we can't have any negotiations with that bomb.
Still active.
Still active, so go disable it fully or something.
So they sent Ben, Barkley, Dyson, and some other guy, who doesn't have a name, I guess, to disarm the bomb.
They sent 4 guys? I thought they only sent 3. Yeah,
no, they sent 4.
Yeah, whatever.
And I'm pretty sure they sent 4, because one of them got killed. And it wasn't Dyson. So, and then they take Polly to the ship, and they leave the Doctor in the control room.
Right, they want to have bargaining leverage, so they take Polly.
Right. And, yeah. What happens next?
And one of the Cybermen contacts Mondas or the ship or something and says that they're ready to move on to their next phase or something like that. And the Doctor's like, you mean the destruction of Earth, don't you? Or the massacre of all humans or something like that. I don't know how he knew, but the Cybermen's like, he's on to us. No, that doesn't happen.
Well, they do go, what? And the Doctor picks up a microphone and is like, good guys, don't disarm that bomb. Stall for time so Mondas can blow up, because they're going to blow up the Earth. One of us must be destroyed.
Yeah, this is the point where the Cybermen become the antagonists, and also the point where you think, do the Cybermen actually have emotions, and they want to just kill everyone off because they think Earth could be an enemy? Maybe.
No, I think, don't they mention it because of the gravity, and there's only, like...
Oh, right, the 2 planets...
One of the planets has to be destroyed to save the other one.
Right. I guess. Still, they become the antagonists at this point. Mainly because Cutler's dead.
And,
so, back in the
bomb room.
The bomb room.
The bomb room.
The other... Ben is like, well, we have to stall for time, guys, but the other 3 think it's hopeless. But then Ben realizes that the Cybermen wouldn't have them be doing the job of disarming the bomb if they could do it themselves, because they're so much more advanced and everything. So he theorizes that they don't want to come into the bomb room thing for some reason, and they further theorize that it's because of the radiation. So they decide to test it by taking one of the radiated rod things from somewhere.
Well,
And
first they tested by pretending to all be dead, and they get the Cyberman to come inside, and then he goes all whoop 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 whoop, and he leaves, and they steal his gun. Then they're like, "Hey, wait, is there something we can carry that's radioactive? Which would be cool."
so they take one of the fuel rod things, and the Cybermen start gassing the room.
Well, they take the doctor to the ship because, I don't know, guess they need more bargaining leverage, but they tell them they have 3 minutes to disarm the bomb, where they're going to kill peeps.
Yeah, I think they said they were going to kill the Doctor and Polly. And you see the Doctor and Polly strapped to these chairs. And I was like, it's the knife chair and the freezing chair. No. The toy maker.
And
And
they kill some Cybermen.
right, they break out of the room, use the guns to kill some stuff, and more people die. So some soldiers and Cybermen die and stuff.
Ben jumps to second on the kill count.
Yeah, I think he
kills
three.
4 during the serial. He kills 3
he
during the
kills
bomb
3 right
sequence
here.
and 1 at the beginning.
Yeah.
Barbara's still at 5.
Yeah, and it took Barbara a really long time to get to 5. Ben, in his 3rd serial, 2nd as a companion, has killed 4. And they didn't really touch
the
upon...
blood is on his hands.
They didn't...
Ben, destroyer of worlds.
They didn't touch upon... Well, the first time he killed the Cybermen, he was obviously disturbed by it. They didn't touch upon that again, but maybe that's because they needed to end this serial. I mean, they still haven't even gotten to the regeneration. The serial's about to end in like
3 minutes left, and he's like, oh my god. Then Monday just blows up. All the Cybermen collapse.
Yes, it really was that abrupt.
The Doctor was right all along.
Literally, it's just like a 20-second sequence where like, well, Mondas blew up. All the Cybermen were drawing power from Mondas, so they're all dead.
You see 4 of them die. 3 in the control room and 1 in the spaceship. And the entire Cyberman race is wiped out, I guess.
And then Geneva's like, well, that solves that. The end of our plot line here. And then Ben goes to save, or not save, but recover Polly and the Doctor. And the Doctor's acting weird.
In his most depressing lines of the whole show, he said, Ben says that it's all over, and the Doctor's like, no, Ben, it's far from over. It's far from over. And then he just kind of walks away.
Yeah, he seemed like he was sort of in a daze.
I think he realized what was going to happen. He was like, oh, shoot.
Yep. So Ben and Polly kind of brush it off, I guess. They think he's just fatigued.
Until they get locked out of the TARDIS.
Right. And they question why the Doctor isn't going back to say bye to everyone at the base. But some weird stuff is going on in the TARDIS.
All the switches and everything is going insane.
And the door unlocks by itself. And Ben and Polly walk in and see the Doctor collapse, and then there's a flash of light, and the Doctor turns into someone else.
And then it ends.
Yep, the regeneration
Boom.
actually did take place right at the end. But
The final 10 seconds, and then it's done.
Honestly,
The first Doctor is no more.
Looking back at it, I think it was more impactful that way. Because right at the end, you see him regenerate, and you know you're never going to see the first Doctor again. And I don't know, I just felt kind of impacted by that.
He's gone.
Yep.
Well, not really.
I mean,
he will return
yes.
in the 3 Doctors, which is like a year and a half away for us at least.
But yeah, that's how it all ends. Well, as the Doctor said, maybe it isn't over, whatever he said.
Don't worry, we still have 10 more Doctors to go through, so...
Right. I don't know. I mean, this was the first regeneration that I've watched.
It's the 1, 2, 3, 4th. I watched the 9th Doctor's regeneration the same day I watched this one. And comparatively, the 9th Doctor's regeneration was kind of a letdown, actually, compared to this. I watched this one after the 9th Doctor regeneration, and this one was better.
Yeah. don't say anything because obviously I haven't watched it, and
No, obviously, yeah.
yeah. So you want to talk about this serial and then talk about the first
Yeah.
Doctor? All right.
Because I
So,
wanted to mention how the physics doesn't work out again.
oh boy.
Look, Mondaz is an exact copy of Earth, right? They're twin planets. So how come the spaceship is being affected by Mondaz's gravity so much when it's in orbit around Earth? Because they're closer to Earth, they're more affected by Earth's gravity. But apparently Mondaz is so
guess.
strong it just rips the spaceship out of Earth orbit.
I don't know. Again, I don't think you can be too bothered by these things. I mean, it's a serial about a planet drawing energy from stuff and weird stuff happening. So, I don't know. I guess it
True.
does make sense, though. But, yeah, as for the introduction of the Cybermen, I don't know. I liked them a lot as villains, as I said before.
Right.
Because, I don't know, the antagonists I end up liking most in this show, like the Cybermen, the Animus from the web planet.
Daleks.
Not even the Daleks. I mean, I didn't think they were... The Daleks, obviously, I like. They're in my top 5 antagonists, probably. But the ones I ended up liking most were the ones that were sort of, I don't know, beyond comprehension in their actions. Like, the Animus was this weird alien thing that, I don't know, had its own motives that were sort of beyond human
Right.
comprehension. And the Cybermen were more, I guess, in line with human thinking, but they don't have emotions, so their actions are totally different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why I ended up liking them.
The Cybermen are pretty good villains.
I
I'm
mean,
glad they didn't use the Daleks for his regeneration serial, because that would have been lame.
they're using it for the second Doctor's first serial, though.
Well, that might be to introduce differences between the second and first Doctor, because the Daleks are such a well-known villain of the first Doctor. They could introduce the second Doctor's character by showing how he differently fights the Daleks compared to the first Doctor.
Yeah, that's true.
And having a familiar enemy would help ease new viewers, considering the Doctor is completely different now.
I can see how this would totally turn off people back in the 60s, because, I mean, no one knew what was going to happen, basically.
Well,
I'd assume.
I think people would at least watch the first episode of the next serial after this
Right.
to find out what happened.
Right.
So hopefully
I mean-
the next serial starts out well enough to hook people.
Yeah.
Looking at you. Whatever the name of the next serial is. Power of the Daleks.
But yeah, obviously the Cybermen are going to be used a lot. And
Oh yeah.
I've obviously in the Daleks, the first serial of the Daleks featuring the Daleks, I really liked the Daleks. So, and then I didn't start to dislike them, but the more the Doctor faces the same enemy, the less threatening they seem, in my opinion. So, I mean, I guess they're going to have ways to reinvent the Daleks, but I've sort of, my liking of the Daleks has sort of died out. So I wonder if my liking of the Cybermen will also do the same as they continue to appear.
Well,
But-
it depends on how they revive the Cybermen, considering they just blew up Mondaz.
They need to stop committing genocide on these alien races and then having them show up again.
and not explaining it. At least in the reboot, there's terribly convoluted and completely made up explanations as to why they show up again, but at least they explain it.
But yeah, again, this serial kind of made me hate Polly. I hope they don't go this same direction with her more in the future.
I don't know. I didn't feel like she didn't do anything. I mean,
Really?
as I was watching the serial, I wasn't like when Barbara was not doing anything like Barbara, why? Or Vicky, why? I was too busy focused on the story itself rather than Polly. Like, I
Right.
wanted to know what General Cutler was gonna do next.
Right, Cutler was a pretty interesting character, actually. And I kind of wanted to talk about the story of this, too, because this was only 4 episodes,
Right.
but this ended up being possibly my favorite or second favorite serial due to just, it was really fast-paced. You never felt like anything was a waste of time, because, I mean, looking back on some serials, there are some segments where I'm like, okay, that scene was sort of a waste of time, or it was
Right.
drawn out more than it should have been. But this actually had very good pacing, and the storyline was interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and I just didn't feel like anything was wasted at all in this serial. So it ended up being really great. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty fast paced and it wasn't rushed. Like, even in just the first episode, I was like, wow, a lot of things happened. Better watch the second one. Admittedly, I did watch all four in a row, like last night, because I procrastinated majorly. But, I actually liked that better than, like, splitting it up over a couple days. Like, I wouldn't have been able to last a week between these episodes because I'd want to know what happened. So I'm actually glad I
right.
watched all four at once.
This serial also did a good job of ending on not, I wouldn't say they were full on cliffhangers, but places where you want to see what happens next.
Right.
I also want to talk about the cinematography in this serial. I felt like this was the first serial that had what could be considered modern cinematography. Because I mean, they had several different angles of stuff, and I mean, it wasn't Reign of Terror animation level of angle changes, but I don't know, the angles in contrast to what this show has done in the past, which is sort of just full shots of the scene with the characters standing in, I don't know how to explain it, but
Right.
panning shots that show all the characters full body, kind of front or half turned to the side.
Right.
But this serial had different angles, which when you're watching something modern, I feel like you don't even pay attention to something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you're trying to. But with something like this, I did definitely notice it, and I liked it.
Well, it aged well.
Yeah,
It's not one of the serials where you can be like, hey, that was definitely made in the 60s, although the costumes give it away. But ignoring that fact,
the aluminum tubes and the Cybermen. No.
ignoring the costume fact, I mean, you would, if this was color, you wouldn't be able to tell for sure that this was made in 66, 67,
66.
66.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to mention the Doctor because I felt
Really, you wanted to mention the
no,
Doctor?
because I felt this serial was weakened by the fact that the Doctor didn't do anything in serial 3. I mean, episode 3. Because I feel like for the Doctor's love story, he should have been in every episode.
Well,
He should have been fighting till the end. I mean, I know they were going for the whole he's
it's getting
wearing
weak.
thin, but like at least have it be a plausible wearing thin where he's fought so much that he collapses and not that he just collapses.
I semi agree with that. I'd say you're right that in the third episode he probably shouldn't have been unconscious for the whole episode. But I did actually like the fact that you could see his, as we said, wearing thin throughout the entire serial. It wasn't just at the end, oh, I guess I'm going to regenerate now. But I think you're right in saying that in episode 3 he should have been active, whereas in episode 4 I think maybe he should have been sort of
Right.
going out of commission, because it was all leading up to that final scene, which I actually did kind of like,
Right.
as much as abrupt as it was. But yeah,
Yeah. I think that's everything I wanted to
mean-
mention about the serial itself. Oh, we can talk about the animation before we move on.
right.
Because the animation was a different style than Reign of
Yeah,
Terror.
different company, I'm assuming.
Probably. It was less trying to be pseudo 3D and more like looked kind of like paper.
Wasn't this one newer too? This animation was from 2013.
Yeah, this animation was newer than the
And
other one.
I don't remember when the other one was from.
I don't know. This one's newer though.
Yeah.
But because the first scene of episode 4 was the same as the ending scene of episode 3, you could immediately tell how the animation was trying to stay as true as possible to the original episode. And even when you watch the regeneration, both animation and the live action,
Right, the regeneration itself was still intact. There's still footage of that, so
luckily,
yeah.
thanks to that show Blue Peter that they used it on. But you could tell that the animation company tried to stay as true as possible to the cinematography of the rest of the serial.
Instead of going all out like they did last time.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, if
I did too.
the next animation in this season is like that, I think I could get through it.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely better than the last one we watched. I'd say I actually liked it. At first, I was a little off put by the character designs because going from live
Right.
action to animation, they just looked a little wonky. But the more a few minutes in, I was like, I can actually see that they did do a good job transferring
Right.
these characters to animation. Um, and it looked good in motion, so
Yeah.
that's all you can want. But yeah, I think that's everything we had to say about this serial. But
Yeah.
there's more to say about the first Doctor. We wouldn't want to just leave it off here.
And with that, no, 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 not even my line. So
Whose line is it anyway? Anyway,
we've done companion retrospectives before, and those are always pretty shoddy. But this time we actually planned
Go
it
us.
out. We have a
Right.
legitimate first Doctor retrospective. We have compiled a list, and
of
probably
things
both
that-
have it out. Be helpful.
Yeah.
Of things that we thought about over the week for the first Doctor. A list of things to talk about as we look back on William Hartnell and his reign as move these keys.
His
Reign
reign
the
of
Doctor.
terror. No.
So many puns. So we should go ahead and jump right in.
Right. We kind of already talked about our favorite enemies. Well, at least I did.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
who were your favorite enemies of the first Doctor?
favorite enemies. I talked about it during the Celestial Toymaker that I enjoyed. The Celestial Toymaker
Yeah.
was a good enemy, as well as, I mean, the Daleks were introduced well. They got a little bit overused towards the end of
The first
the
Doctor's
first Doctor,
run.
but they were good when they were introduced, and hopefully, I'm hoping the next serial can make them good again. I'm actually looking forward to that. There weren't any others that were too memorable except Tagana because we
Yeah.
keep mentioning him.
Yeah, honestly, just the sheer fact that Tagana was appeared where he did just cements him as the one guy we're going to keep mentioning again and again.
Yeah, I mean, he was.
I mean,
I guess.
looking back. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'll talk in a
Right.
even dog. And I just wanted to say that looking back, I mean, I know I hated on how much you liked Tagana way back then, but looking back, he actually was one of the only enemies who was actually really was threatening.
Really?
Like comparatively, there weren't really any enemies that could match wits with the Doctor.
Really? Because I was just about to say there were way better enemies than him, and he wasn't that memorable except for the fact
Well,
that he appeared
he was
where he
memorable
did.
in season one. In
was.
season one, there weren't many enemies that matched the Doctor, because season one was all about developing the Doctor. Obviously, once they hit like season 2 and 3, they had more varied enemies that were on the level or better than Tagana.
I guess like the monk, the Toymaker, etc. Well, the monk kind of.
The monk phased out of existence after the
Yeah.
Daleks master plan.
I was gonna say in the Daleks master plan, the monk kind of was way more incompetent than he was
In the
Whenever-
Time Meddler.
yeah. But
Do you want
Yeah.
to talk about your favorite enemies then?
I kind of did already.
Right.
Obviously, I liked the Animus because I really liked the Web Planet.
Right.
And the Cybermen are up there, honestly. We both liked the Sensorites,
Right.
and one of the reasons I liked the second leader or whatever his name was in that serial was because in contrast to what the show does a lot, where there's one race of fully evil
Right.
creatures, the Sensorites were more human in the fact that they each had their own goals and ideas,
Right.
and it was just one of them trying to do what he was doing. But anyway,
Well, I think that leads into the. I mean, as we were watching the serials, we only knew what we knew from the serials before that. We couldn't predict what was going to happen. But now, as we look back on all the serials, originally we had said that there were a lot of serials that were like a resistance group pitted against an enemy. But
yeah,
a lot of the stories, even though they were at their core that basic premise, a lot of them were different in like subtle ways that made them interesting. Like the Sensorites, where there was the resistance group against the leader, but they had like a reason because they didn't trust the outsiders because of the disease. That was the Sensorites, right?
looking back on that, just to interrupt you for a sec,
No,
sorry,
yeah, go
but
ahead.
the Sensorites was one of the only serials where the Resistance group was the group that wasn't aided by the Doctor.
Right.
Just something I
I
wanted to
mean,
point out. I wanted to
we
point out.
mentioned that we had wanted a serial where the resistance group like didn't appear as good as it was, but I feel like now that the first Doctor's dead, having a serial like that, if it was executed in the way we had wanted, I mean, I know there was like semblances of that plot in like the Ark, for example. Um, if it had been executed like that, we wouldn't have got as much development out of the first Doctor. I know that's leading into something we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, but I think it was vital to developing the Doctor as a character of good, that he always worked with the resistance movement, except with like rare instances like the Sensorites.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. It helped solidify what his morals were
Right.
on a variety of different situations
Mm-hmm.
because they've gotten into so many weird situations.
Right.
But yeah, I think that leads us into our favorite scenes.
Favorite scenes. You can go ahead and start this one
Um,
since I started favorite enemies.
as much as I want to choose something funny, like the Doctor realizing he just helped burn down Rome, I have to say
Well,
in
we
my,
can split it dramatic and comedic then, if you want to do that.
I guess, yeah, I mean, okay, favorite comedic was probably where he looked back on Rome burning. He was like, "Yep." And I know this was really out of character and stupid, but when he decided to kick Ian off the TARDIS, in
It was pretty funny.
he was
I
just
mean,
like,
that was pretty funny.
yeah.
I mean, it was way out of character, but it was funny.
And that leads me into something else I wanted to say, where there are a bunch of different writers and directors on this show, and several different producers.
Right.
But somehow, aside for those random several instances where characters have acted out of character, they do a pretty good job of consistently writing the characters.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming
is pretty
someone
impressive.
behind the scenes keeps track and like tells all the new writers what they need to look for.
Yeah, I suppose. But still, yeah. So, do you want to jump into comedic, or should we?
Well, yeah, I'll give my comedic. Looking back, I think it was it Planet of the Giants where the Doctor's like, "Won't be long now."
Oh yeah,
It's one of my favorites, as well as Ben going, "I have this knife," just because it was so absurd. Just how quickly he had that knife out. Those are probably my two favorite comedic scenes. But the Rome one was pretty funny, as well as kicking Ian off the TARDIS. Both of those were funny. There were a lot of like moments of comedic brilliance in this show.
yep.
At times where it was needed.
I feel like some of them also weren't even intentional.
Right. Some of them were just funny because of how absurd they ended up being. Like Ben
Right.
with the knife.
Yep.
Or the Doctor kicking Ian off the TARDIS. Like they weren't meant to be funny, but they ended up being funny.
Yeah, I think the kicking Ian off the TARDIS was actually meant to be a super serious cliffhanger, but
Well, I think it became so funny because I think everybody realized it was out of character, and maybe William Hartnell just turned it up to like 50 for grumpy old madness, just to mess with everyone. But
yeah, let's go ahead and do serious scenes now.
okay,
We go ahead with that.
this goes along with my favorite quote, but one of my favorite serious scenes was when Susan left the TARDIS.
Yeah.
In the Dalek invasion of Earth, if only because it was the first like serious scene they had to do. I mean, before that, yeah, they were serious, so everybody could die. But this was the first time that there was something like emotionally important to the Doctor was happening. Like his
Right.
granddaughter was leaving,
Right, like they couldn't mess this scene up.
and they didn't. They executed it very well, and the writing was brilliant. I mean, it was a little bit abrupt, which, I mean, did draw away from it. Well, it was a little abrupt, but they were hinting at it before.
Right. They were hinting at it in season 1, even.
Right. But I think it was one of the best dramatic scenes in the show. I mean, also the regeneration, obviously, because that was written well. A lot of the important scenes were when companions were leaving. I mean,
Dodo.
if I had to give a runner-up for favorite dramatic scene, when Steven left the TARDIS and the Doctor was sitting there and he's like, they've all gone. They always leave. Like, that too was such a sad moment. Because the Doctor realized everyone was going to leave him in the end. Even though he could live for a long time, everybody else would die in the end.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that's touched upon a lot in fiction. You know,
Right.
the one who either like an immortal character or a character who lives for a really long time has all the people he or
Right.
she knows just leave or die or whatever. But they did a really good job of it with
Right.
this. And yeah, I was gonna say my favorite scene, bar none, with the first Doctor is his farewell speech to Susan.
Yeah, I think that's pretty high up there in one of the best first Doctor scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went for a scene that was just like the Doctor being awesome, you could find other ones, but the moment where the Doctor was the Doctor, the grandfather, with a twinkle, that was that moment when Susan left.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the defining moment of the first Doctor that really encompasses his entire character the
Right.
best.
I mean, because if it wasn't for that moment, everything that happened after wouldn't be as like important. I mean, getting new companions and then them leaving, you know, if it wasn't for the first, then
Right, even with something disappointing like Dodo's write out, because of the way Susan was written out, you can it makes it easy to believe that although it wasn't shown on screen, the Doctor was sort of disturbed by it.
right. I mean, we don't know what the Doctor said to Vicky in the TARDIS, but we can only assume it was something like "Go forth and have a good life" or something, which is
Yeah.
what I imagine the Doctor would say.
Right. Which actually ties in with my favorite quote from the Doctor, which is from Susan's
Right. Yeah, I was
farewell
gonna say the
speech.
same thing.
Yeah, it's I think we both have the same one, the
Yeah.
go forth in your
Yeah.
own convictions and
Prove to me that I'm not mistaken in mine.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Or won't be long now.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that was,
that quote just encompasses everything the Doctor's about. Making people's lives good, saving people, going on adventures. Even when it's a lighthearted adventure, you know, he's always going out and making people's lives better, I guess.
yep. I mean, especially with his companions. His
Right.
companions also influences him, which I want to talk about in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
What's next on our list? Favorite locations?
As far as set design, the Ark was
Yeah.
was good.
The
Ark
Ark
is
was a really well designed set, I'd have to say. I'm trying to remember all the serials, 'cause there was another one I wanted to mention. There was a couple historical serials where they did a... Even when the story wasn't necessarily like perfectly historical, they did a good job of capturing that moment in history. Like, for example, Reign of Terror, even though it was not necessarily historically relevant, they did a good job of like capturing what Robespierre's office would look like, or the prison would look like in France. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess I did see that, and I was gonna say Saint Massacre of Saint Bartholomew's Eve, although I hated it,
Right.
it was the same basic period,
Right.
so they did a good job with
Looked
that
like
too.
Paris was the thing.
I don't know, maybe I'm a little biased in saying this, but I also liked the original spaceship they showed up in the Sensorites. I don't know. Mm-hmm. As far as spaceships go in this serial, I felt that sort of was the best. You know, it was a lot of the spaceships in this show are portrayed as being sort of not poor. I don't know how to say this, but insufficiently staffed. There's only like a few people on the ship. It's kind of dark.
Galaxy 4.
It's kind of dark everywhere,
Right.
and it's sort of depressing in my opinion. As it should be, as I think it is good to be. Well, really wording this poorly, but the ship in the Sensorites, the first ship with the humans on it, I thought did a good job of that.
Right. And another one, I just thought of this right now, was the junkyard right at the beginning of the show where the TARDIS was found.
Yeah, looked like a junkyard.
Well, I mean, they had to get that moment perfect. The reveal of going into the TARDIS and it being bigger on the inside,
Oh.
it had to take place in a location where it was like crowded, and they had to make it so that the inside of the TARDIS was more impressive that it was bigger on
Yeah,
the inside.
something that the viewer would obviously say, "Wow, that's bigger."
Right. So by
Um,
making such a cluttered junkyard outside and then such the clean interior of the TARDIS, it
yeah,
it improves upon the impact of seeing the TARDIS for the first time.
yeah. I actually hadn't thought about that, but totally. Um, there was one other one I wanted to mention. Oh
Was it
well,
Galaxy 4?
no. Oh, it was the Keys of Marinus. Just
Oh
not
yeah.
not because anything in well, not because there was anything spectacular set design wise. I mean, they were pretty good,
Right.
but because they had to do so many different sets for that serial, just because of what it was about, that I thought they did a good job of making each one different from the last and also not subpar.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Most disappointing things.
Well, some of the most disappointing things that in the first Doctor's run actually were more related to companions than the first Doctor. I'd have to say, like the write outs for Dodo and Steven, I thought
Right.
were kind of disappointing. I mean, obviously, we talked about how you can look deeper into it than what
Right.
you see on screen, but still, I mean, with what Susan got, which was really good, and then I felt Barbara and Ian also got sufficiently written out,
Right.
but then they kind of just dropped the ball on the other companions. I felt, um,
What was it?
and which is
Katarina?
I felt that was sort of disappointing because whether even if Susan's write out wasn't as good as it was, or if Ian and Barbara's wasn't as good as it was,
Right.
if it was still good, it would have still been memorable because they were the first two companion write outs.
Right.
So I felt like they should have tried to make the other companion write outs better because they would be memorable not for sucking, but for being good. Because I mean, years down the road, am I really gonna remember Steven's write out, for example, as being
Good.
good? No. I mean,
I mean,
just no.
like, we can give Vicky a pause, I guess, because we don't know what the Doctor said in the TARDIS. It would have been better if we'd known what he said, but I mean, Stephen was such a long-running companion. He was like up there with Ian and Barbara on how long he was there. They should have at least given him. If they stopped caring about everyone else, they should have at least given Stephen something memorable,
Right.
rather than just "You're a king now, Stephen."
I'd say Steven's false write out a few serials before that was better than his actual write out. Not because, well, actually, yeah, just overall, it was better, in my opinion. And if Steven had left the Doctor because he'd gotten so sick of seeing all the deaths that the Doctor had witnessed, and the Doctor ended, and the Doctor's farewell speech to Steven was what he had said there, that would have been a really impactful write out of a companion, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been way better,
I mean,
probably.
it would have been.
I mean, just that speech the Doctor said there was impactful already, and if Stephen had actually stayed off the TARDIS and like the doors had closed behind Dodo, you would have been like, "Wow."
Yeah, and I obviously I don't know what happens from here on out, but it would have been one of the only times, or the only time so far, that the Doctor and a companion split on bad terms.
Yeah, and that would have been sad,
Yep.
especially since Stephen was such a funny character.
Um. Most. So, yeah. What are some of
Most
your most
disappointing things. I agree with the write-outs. They were pretty disappointing. I expected so much more out of the historical serials, though. Like Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve was such a disappointing serial. I mean, it started out and you're like, oh, this is going to have potential. The Doctor and Stephen gallivanting around Paris. And then just the Doctor disappears for 3 episodes and you just see Stephen mess around for a bit, accidentally run back into the Doctor, and they leave.
That's true. I mean, for me, it wasn't disappointing per se because at that point I'd already realized I liked the sci-fi serials more than the historical ones, and I didn't even like that serial at all. So I don't know. I could see how that would be disappointing.
Had so much potential. I mean, you can see what they did with the gunfighters. They made it good. Why didn't they do it with Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve? Oh well.
I mean, Feast of Stephen was probably the most disappointing episode of the entire show.
Well, the good news about that one is you can literally just retcon it out in your head and it doesn't even matter because...
This is true.
Except for those 6 months of adventure as they supposedly take right after that episode before they rejoin with the Daleks. Yeah, that happens in the extended universe prose and audio dramas, apparently.
But, yeah. We wanted also to talk about character development overall for the first Doctor, which we have been for this entire retrospective. But, yeah, I wanted to say that, as you were saying before, the Doctor definitely influences his companions and even random characters in the different serials. But I'd also say that his companions definitely influenced him.
Yeah.
Because before traveling with Ian and Barbara, it had just been the Doctor and Susan. So being Susan's grandfather, the Doctor was obviously had sort of a position of power on the TARDIS, and you know, he was in charge of the TARDIS, and he was her grandfather, so he was in charge of her too, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then once Ian and Barbara showed up, Ian more so than Barbara questioned the Doctor's authority, possibly for the first time, and I think that was impactful on the Doctor. And but in the end, you know, he came to terms with it and realized that sometimes what his companions say might be the right thing, and he might not always have the best ideas.
Yeah, I
felt
agree.
that was definitely important in season 1.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about Ian and the Doctor and Barbara.
No, it's fine. I stole your thunder.
We have similar thoughts. Great minds think alike. Lesser minds seldom differ. The less remembered part of this quote. I mean, it goes beyond just Barbara and Ian as well. I mean, extending all the way to like Stephen and Vicky. I mean, once Vicky joined, like another teenager that could possibly be like the age of his granddaughter, he had to remember, I guess, some of the things he had put in place with Susan. You know, I guess his grandfatherly figure was reawakened in him. But then, like, when she left and then we got Dodo, who was more adventurous, the Doctor had to be more protective to make sure she didn't run herself into a wall.
Make sure she didn't sit in the freezing chair.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, the Doctor's whole story arc was him setting out these companions to be great and them setting out to make him great, I guess. I mean,
I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, well, he affected them and they affected him, basically.
Yeah. Which is what you would expect and what you would hope for in this type of show.
Yeah.
With one central character and then other important characters surrounding him, but also leaving at certain times. And it's interesting because in a lot of shows there would just be, you know, the central cast of characters with their sort of character development, obviously with the main character too. But in this, even the main character is going to have more than one personality, and there's just so many conflicting people who influence each other, and I think we're going to see more of that down the road.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like when you have a long-running show, take NCIS, for example.
Oh, God.
You have, like, you get agents that get killed off, and then you replace them with a different agent, and then you're left with the conundrum. Do you try and make them, like, similar to the character they replaced, or do you try and make them unique? I mean, by making it similar to the old character, you'll keep the old viewers, but probably lose new ones, whereas if you change them, then you risk alienating the old viewers, which I guess the writers here had to face every time they wrote out a companion. They had to consider, do we make the new companion similar to the old one, or do we introduce a completely different character who may have different interactions with the Doctor? And now even more so that the Doctor is regenerated, I guess they have to make the choice of, do we try and make the second Doctor similar to the first Doctor, or do we go down the path where we make him different?
Right.
I mean,
and also a sort of barrier, I think, in developing the second Doctor's character would be, yes, they want to differentiate him from the first Doctor, but they also need to do so in sort of subtle ways, because they can't just go full 180 on the first Doctor's character. Yes, that would separate
Right.
the two, but that viewers would just be like, okay, they're just doing this for the sake of differentiating them, not and so that's why I think developing the second Doctor's character is going to be pretty important, because even if there are similarities to the first Doctor, that doesn't necessarily mean that it'd be overdone or played out. That's just what I think.
I mean, as well, they're gonna have to convince Ben and Polly that this still is the Doctor, not some like imposter, celestial toy maker working his tricks again. Does that wrap the retrospective?
I think it does.
First Doctor.
Overall, first Doctor, extremely memorable, obviously, to me, since I started with him.
Right, and that leads into something I was going to actually ask you before we finished was your first regeneration, obviously. Was it disappointing? Was it everything you expected?
It was abrupt, definitely. The entire ending to the serial was abrupt, with Mondas just exploding and everything working out. It was abrupt,
Right.
but I like how it was done. And obviously, since it was my first one, I'll probably remember it as more so than others down the line.
I mean,
Unless there's some amazing ones down the line, which I'm assuming there is, because I kind of spoiled some of them from the reboot.
well, the reboot are the only ones I've seen. They're pretty good, except for the ninth, which is kind of disappointing. But I also wanted to know, we went into this knowing it was the regeneration serial, but obviously, if you were watching it live, you wouldn't have known that. And I don't know if I liked it better knowing it was a regeneration serial or not. Because I went into the 10th Doctor's regeneration not knowing it was his regeneration, which is like next to impossible modern days, because they always announce when the new Doctor's coming out. But I went into 11's knowing it was his regeneration serial, and I haven't decided whether I like it better knowing they're gonna die or not.
I'd say for this, I probably would have liked it less if I hadn't known. Because if I hadn't known, well, if I had been watching it live when it first aired in the 60s, I wouldn't have even known what was going on, which I guess would have enticed me to watch it next week. Well, voice crack. But I would have just been like, what's happening? And I wouldn't have really seen it as, the first Doctor's end, which I actually thought was good, with his actions and what he had said, and how much of a, I mean, I don't know, I'd say he went out with a bang, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it differs by regeneration, I suppose. I mean, this one, if you didn't know it was his regeneration, you'd be very confused at the end of the serial with the Doctor like, it's far from over. And then he collapses and then light, and then his face looks different. But I guess, I mean, I enjoyed the 10th Doctor's regeneration not knowing it was going to be his regeneration, because he has a really emotional final scene that made it a lot better not knowing it was coming.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that about wraps this episode.
Yep.
I don't know how long we've been talking for. Probably a while.
Long time.
So email us, thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Did you think the first Doctor's regeneration was good? Email us and tell us. And
tell us some of your favorites of the first Doctor, like we've been doing.
Yeah, favorite characters, favorite scene. I don't know. Maybe you come up with another category we didn't think of. Favorite director.
Favorite hat of the first Doctor.
Definitely the one from Reign of Terror.
Definitely.
The feather.
Definitely.
Should have kept that one. Which brings to the final point I actually wanted to mention that I've been thinking about for like a day now. I enjoyed how the costume, in the end, he had his cloak and his hat on, which was the same way he was introduced at the beginning of the show. So I'm glad that even though the cloak and the hat didn't make an appearance for 2 seasons, it came full circle and showed up again at his end. That's all I wanted to say about that. Uh, Rate us on iTunes. Check out the website. We'll update the death count so you can see all 24 deaths that occurred in the serial.
And all 4 of Ben's kills.
We passed 200, guys.
Yeah! Well, might not be something to be happy about, but the 200th death was a random Cyberman.
The Cybermen had names, but we're not going to look them up. So that concludes that. Next week, we have the first Second Doctor serial.
The Power of the Daleks.
Hopefully it's good.
Yeah, definitely. But until then, the end.